The stone city of Machu Picchu is one of the most fascinating archaeological sites on the planet.
High in the Andes, stones the size of buses fit together with machine-like perfection, without mortar, without gaps, and without explanation. Peru's ancient ruins aren't just impressive, they're impossible. For centuries, experts have marveled, measured, and guessed, but nothing has truly added up. Now, new scientific breakthroughs are changing everything. The truth behind these megalithic structures is finally emerging, and it's far stranger and more real than anyone ever imagined. Ready to drop your jaws? The enigma of the Andes, what we see today. High above the cloud line, where the thin air bites and the mountains stretch like sleeping giants, lies a mystery carved in stone. At first glance, the massive walls of Sakaian, perched above the ancient city of Cusco, seem like relics of another age. But step closer, and the enigma deepens. Immense blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, are locked together with precision that seems beyond even modern construction. No mortar, no wiggle room, just seamless, interlocking perfection that has stood unshaken for centuries, through floods, invasions, and earthquakes that have reduced entire cities to rubble. Travel further to Ollantaytambo, and the riddle intensifies. At nearly 9,200 feet above sea level, this fortress temple complex holds stones so massive, engineers today admit it would be a challenge to move them with modern cranes. These monoliths were somehow quarried, shaped, and hauled uphill through steep, rugged terrain, without wheels, steel, or even written language. The site is more than a marvel, it's a defiance of logic. Then there's Machu Picchu, the jewel of the Inca Empire, often admired for its beauty, but rarely understood for its impossible construction. Built on a razor-thin mountain ridge prone to landslides and earthquakes, the city rests atop a web of terraces and drainage systems that show not just engineering know-how, but long-term environmental planning. The stones here, too, are perfectly cut and joined. Even under microscope-level scrutiny, some seams are so tight that not even a human hair can slip through. Everywhere in these ruins, there's a pattern, advanced design principles, meticulous craftsmanship, and megalithic stones that had to be moved and placed with a precision we associate with digital machines, not primitive tools. What makes this more than awe-inspiring is the choice of material. These structures aren't made of soft limestone or clay. Many are constructed from diorite and andesite, stones so hard they rank just below diamond on the Mohs hardness scale. Yet the ancient builders shaped them with curves, angles, and joints that appear melted or molded, something not possible with the bronze or copper tools known to exist at the time. Modern geologists and surveyors have taken measurements, traced quarries miles away, and tried to reconstruct the logistics. But even with all our cranes, trucks, and lasers, the process of cutting, transporting, and fitting these stones remains almost entirely unexplained. The quarries for Sakaian, for instance, lie several kilometers away, and the route includes deep ravines, sharp inclines, and no flat roads. There are no records of wheels, draft animals capable of such loads, or advanced tools, just stone placed against stone with almost supernatural perfection. Even more baffling is how these ruins have withstood centuries of seismic activity. Peru sits on a fault line, and earthquakes have repeatedly shaken its cities. Spanish colonial structures, built centuries later with European masonry techniques, crumbled under the pressure. But these ancient megalithic walls, they flexed and held, exactly as if they were designed to withstand violent tectonic shifts. It wasn't luck, it was engineering. The deeper you go into the Andes, the more you find. Dozens of lesser-known sites, Pisac, Tipon, Moray, contain the same signature: flawless masonry, high-altitude construction, and inexplicable stone shaping. Each site, no matter how remote, carries the unmistakable fingerprint of an intelligence that understood terrain, time, and material far beyond what's recorded in the conventional history of the region. The scale, precision, and materials defy every conventional expectation of what ancient civilizations should have been capable of. This isn't about primitive huts or even simple pyramids. This is something else entirely, an architectural fingerprint that hints at lost knowledge or an intelligence far more advanced than history allows. So how did they do it? How were these megalithic masterpieces carved, moved, and locked into place with such impossible precision without the tools, techniques, or technology we rely on today? Impossible engineering, the facts defying human effort. Stand before the megalithic walls of Sacsayhuaman or the Sun Temple of Ollantaytambo, and one question dominates the mind. How? Not how impressive, but literally, how was this done? Because no matter how deeply you dig through textbooks, engineering manuals, or historical records, there are no clear answers. What we do have is physical evidence, stone, measurement, weight, and geometry that contradicts everything we thought we knew about ancient construction. Let's begin with the sheer scale. Some stones in Peru's highland sites weigh between 50 and 120 tons. A few have been estimated to exceed 200 tons. These weren't built on-site with local rocks. Many were dragged from quarries several miles away, and not along a flat road, through uneven mountain trails, across rivers, and up steep inclines. There's no evidence of wheels, no pack animals strong enough to haul these weights, and no traces of the kind of infrastructure that would be needed for sled-based hauling. Even more stunning is what happened after the stones arrived. These builders didn't just stack blocks. They sculpted each stone like a puzzle piece, cutting complex angles and multi-sided surfaces that fit perfectly into one another. In Sacsayhuaman, some individual stones interlock with up to 12 surrounding blocks. Every joint is tight. There's no mortar holding them together, yet they haven't shifted in over 500 years. During massive earthquakes in the region, colonial Spanish churches cracked and fell, but the ancient walls held, flexing with the tremors as if designed with seismic physics in mind. This type of stonework is called polygonal masonry, and it's unlike anything else found in classical architecture. Modern engineers, including some who've analyzed the ruins in person, have admitted that replicating these results today would be a logistical and financial nightmare, even with cranes, diamond-tipped tools, and computer-assisted design. The tool issue is perhaps the most confounding. The Incas, and any civilization before them, are believed to have only had access to tools made of bronze or copper. Yet the stones they worked with, such as andesite and diorite, are harder than any of those metals. In modern terms, it would be like trying to carve glass with a plastic spoon. Geologists confirm shaping diorite requires tools with hardness at least equal to, if not exceeding, the stone itself. There is no archaeological evidence, no recovered tools, no forges, no residue that explains how these incredibly hard stones were shaped so precisely. And the evidence of cutting is just as strange. Some of the stones show long, smooth cuts that resemble what we see from modern circular saws. Others have perfectly flat surfaces and sharp 90-degree angles, as if milled by industrial machines. In several places, stone blocks seem to show signs of having been softened or molded. One example is the Stone of 12 Angles in Cusco. It fits so tightly between other stones, and with such complexity that many believe it wasn't carved, it was shaped while soft, like clay. But there's no natural process or chemical reaction known to exist that can soften andesite or diorite without extreme industrial heat or acids, none of which existed in known ancient Peru. And yet, here, these stones are. Some researchers have speculated that ancient builders used a now-lost technique to temporarily alter the molecular structure of the stones, perhaps using sound frequencies or high-temperature methods. Others suggest the use of unknown plant-based chemicals that might have allowed for stone softening. In the 20th century, Peruvian explorer and biologist Percy Fawcett heard native legends of a plant that could soften stone, and similar stories exist in Amazonian folklore. But no scientific confirmation has ever emerged. There's more. Certain stones at Ollantaytambo appear to have drill holes or recessed notches that seem machine-made. At Sakaian, some stones display scoop-like impressions that look as if chunks were carved out with a tool the size of a human torso. Uniform, smooth, and strangely symmetrical. These marks don't align with the rough chiseling one would expect from handheld tools. What's more, these massive constructions weren't just structurally sound, they were functionally intelligent. Drainage channels, slope alignments, and water flow systems were integrated into the stonework. Terraces weren't decorative, they regulated rainwater and prevented landslides. At Machu Picchu, a hidden water system still works perfectly to this day. Such foresight requires not only advanced understanding of geology and hydrology, but also long-term environmental planning. One might argue that the builders simply used ingenuity, manpower, and time. But here's where that theory collapses. Many of these structures would have taken generations to complete with the tools and methods traditionally attributed to them. The Incas, whose civilization rose in the 13th century, didn't have the time. And crucially, they never claimed they built these megaliths. In their own oral histories, they inherited these structures from those who came before. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. These were not the result of guesswork, luck, or brute strength. They were engineered, designed, built with intention and ability that outpaced anything else from the ancient world, and, in some cases, might even outmatch us today. So if the tools don't fit and the timeline doesn't add up, what does science say? What happens when archaeologists, geologists, and engineers start putting these structures under a microscope? What ancient records and science say? For all the mystery surrounding Peru's megalithic ruins, perhaps the most overlooked truth is this: the Inca never said they built them. In fact, when Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century and marveled at the cyclopean stone walls of Cusco and Sakaian, they asked the Incas how they achieved such construction. The response was consistent and clear: these were here before us. The Inca, widely respected for their architectural skills, did build impressive structures, terracing systems, temples, roads. But their masonry, though excellent, pales in comparison to the older, larger, and more precisely cut stones found at the foundations of many sacred sites. In numerous locations, their own stonework is built on top of or around much older foundations. This layered architecture tells a silent story. What lies beneath came first, and it was stronger, smarter, and more advanced. So what does science say? Dating stone directly is impossible with carbon-based methods like radiocarbon dating. Stone contains no organic material to measure decay, but archaeologists can date associated organic material, wood, charcoal, bones, found in construction layers or between stones. And when they do, the results often contradict the accepted timelines. In several cases, carbon samples near the base layers of ancient walls have dated thousands of years older than the Inca Empire. Some suggest human activity in the Andes going back 4,000 to 5,000 years, possibly more. While this doesn't conclusively prove who built the megalithic walls,
whose immense stone walls may hold secrets which predate the Inca themselves,
it does point to advanced human occupation long before the rise of the Inca. Geologists, too, have entered the conversation. Studies of stone types used at key sites reveal complex logistics. For instance, many blocks at Ollantaytambo came from a quarry located across a river and up a steep slope, several kilometers away. Moving multi-ton stones from there to the construction site without steel, wheels, or cranes is still not reproducible with ease today. Terrain analysis confirms there are no remnants of large roads, ramps, or mechanical devices that could explain the feat. The terrain simply doesn't allow for traditional transport methods. More intriguing still are the tool marks, or lack thereof. Under microscopic analysis, some stone surfaces appear unusually smooth, as if polished with machinery. Others bear marks that suggest high-speed rotary cutting, something impossible with bronze or stone hammers. A 2022 peer-reviewed study published in a geoscience journal examined surface grooves at multiple Peruvian sites and concluded they could not have been made by traditional chiseling alone. The study stopped short of speculating how, but its findings left the door open. Further investigation into unknown methods of stone shaping is required. Satellite imaging and LiDAR scans have also revolutionized the study of these sites. Beneath the soil of the Sacred Valley and surrounding highlands, hidden patterns are emerging. Geometric layouts, buried terraces, and even large underground chambers. Some of these structures mirror the shapes and alignments of the surface ruins, suggesting a complex urban design, not just scattered temples. At Sakaian, LiDAR revealed subterranean pathways and large voids beneath the fortress, possibly caverns or water systems that remain unexcavated. If true, it would mean what we see above ground is just a fragment of a much larger, planned engineering marvel. And then there are astronomical alignments. Sites like Machu Picchu and the Coricancha Temple in Cusco are aligned with incredible precision to solstices, equinoxes, and celestial events. The Coricancha, in particular, was built atop a megalithic foundation that aligns with the June solstice sunrise, accurate to within a fraction of a degree. This demands not only observational astronomy, but precise engineering. No crude guessing, no trial and error, just mathematical execution. In recent years, some archaeologists have begun to publicly question the official timeline. In 2024, a roundtable held at the University of San Marcos in Lima included experts in archaeology, geology, and civil engineering. Several participants acknowledged a growing consensus. There are still unknowns that can't be explained using current historical models. These voices aren't fringe theorists. They're credentialed researchers simply following the evidence. The mystery isn't necessarily who built these structures, but rather how they did it with the resources we believe were available at the time. If the timeline is wrong, if the tools weren't sufficient, and if the builders were not the Inca, then what civilization possessed the knowledge and ability to achieve this? Beyond human capability, theories grounded in reality. By now, one thing is clear. The megalithic ruins of Peru push far beyond what history tells us ancient humans could do. The stones are too large, the cuts too precise, and the engineering too advanced. So if the Inca didn't build these massive foundations, and if modern tools would struggle to replicate them today, who did? The first step toward a real answer begins with letting go of outdated assumptions. For over a century, mainstream archaeology has largely relied on a linear view of human history, that civilization progresses slowly and steadily, from primitive to advanced. But what if that's not always the case? What if highly advanced knowledge existed in isolated civilizations now lost to time? One theory gaining traction among researchers, both professional and independent, is that a pre-Incan civilization with a high degree of technical knowledge may have once thrived in the Andes long before written records. This wouldn't necessarily mean high technology in the modern sense, not lasers or machinery, but a sophisticated understanding of materials, physics, astronomy, and natural forces. Some believe that this unknown culture may have developed a method of working with stone that has since disappeared from the historical record. Whether it was a type of vibration-based softening, heat treatment, or plant-based chemical alteration, The evidence suggests these builders possessed tools or techniques that allowed them to manipulate stone at a molecular level. This isn't pure speculation. In other ancient sites around the world, such as Baalbek in Lebanon, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and the Great Pyramids in Egypt, we see similar patterns: massive stones, inexplicable precision, and a lack of clear origin stories. These sites are thousands of miles apart, yet share the same architectural fingerprint, almost as if different civilizations were applying variations of a forgotten global science. Consider this: ancient cultures worldwide have passed down stories of those who came before, of golden ages lost to cataclysm. The Inca spoke of the Viracocha, a godlike figure who emerged after a great flood to rebuild civilization using unknown powers.
This was the southern entrance to Cusco, so it was like a choke point. If you wanted to enter, you went through this one.
The Greeks spoke of Atlantis. The Sumerians wrote about advanced beings in the Epic of Gilgamesh. These aren't necessarily literal histories, but they do hint at a shared memory of something greater, a global disruption, followed by a period of rebuilding. If such an event did occur, a massive natural catastrophe, for example, it could have erased entire civilizations, leaving only their hardest, most durable structures behind. Stone doesn't rot or burn, it endures. And that might be all that's left of a once flourishing society. Walls, foundations, and forgotten knowledge encoded in their shapes. Sound far-fetched, modern science is beginning to consider the possibility. In 2023, researchers from the University of Oxford published a paper exploring the concept of technological amnesia, the idea that certain skills or techniques can be lost across generations due to catastrophe, migration, or cultural collapse. They used Peru's megalithic ruins as a case study, proposing that ancient stone shaping methods may have existed that are simply no longer remembered or recorded. Another angle worth exploring is acoustic engineering. At some of the sites in Peru, including Ollantaytambo and the Temple of the Sun, researchers have noted strange acoustic properties. Claps or voices bounce back with unnatural clarity, suggesting intentional sound design. Could ancient builders have used sound not just for rituals, but also as a working tool? Laboratory experiments have shown that sound frequencies can, under the right conditions, move and even fracture materials. While this is still highly experimental, it aligns with legends from multiple ancient cultures that speak of songs or tones used to move mountains. And then there's the theory of magnetic manipulation. Some stones at ancient sites register small but significant magnetic anomalies. One hypothesis suggests the builders may have understood natural magnetism well enough to use it in construction, perhaps in balancing or lifting stone. Again, the science is in early stages, but the patterns are there, waiting to be explained. Importantly, none of these theories require aliens, magic, or science fiction. They point instead to a simpler but more profound idea, that human history is deeper and more complex than we've been taught. That advanced knowledge isn't always accompanied by skyscrapers or electricity. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, etched in stone, misunderstood, and ignored. If these builders weren't primitive, and their methods weren't impossible, then maybe it's not the ruins that are mysterious. Maybe it's our understanding that's incomplete. But why did this knowledge vanish? If such a civilization existed, what happened to it? And why do the Inca and others say they found the ruins and did not build them? Why it was buried or forgotten? If there was once a civilization capable of building Peru's impossible megalithic structures, the next question is painfully obvious. What happened to it? How could such knowledge, such extraordinary skill in stone, simply vanish? One answer may lie in the mountains themselves. Peru is no stranger to cataclysm. Earthquakes, landslides, volcanic eruptions, and floods have reshaped this land for millennia. These mountains, beautiful and immovable as they seem, sit on the edge of one of the most active tectonic zones on Earth. The Andean region has experienced repeated cycles of natural disaster, some so severe they likely erased entire settlements. In fact, geological evidence shows that around 11,000 to 12,000 years ago, the region and much of the planet underwent sudden climatic shifts, part of what's now called the Younger Dryas period. This era saw massive glacial melting, oceanic flooding, and sudden temperature drops. In South America, there is sedimentary evidence of massive ancient floods, suggesting that entire valleys could have been submerged or swept away. If a pre-Incan civilization existed during or before this time, their cities, except for the stone, would have been destroyed. And it's not just natural forces that erase. Human history shows a pattern of conquest and cultural overwrite. When the Spanish arrived in Peru in the 1500s, they not only conquered the Inca, but actively destroyed their records, rituals, and stories. Temples were burned, oral histories were suppressed, and where ancient stone temples stood, Christian churches were often built directly on top, sometimes reusing the same stones, even the same foundations. Coricancha, the most sacred Inca temple, was turned into the Church of Santo Domingo. In doing so, the Spanish weren't just replacing one culture with another, they were erasing connections to the even older foundations those temples were built upon. The conquistadors marveled at the ancient stones, even noting in letters that the Inca claimed no knowledge of how such things were made. But they dismissed these accounts, considering them pagan mythology. And so, the link to the deeper past was cut. Oral tradition, passed down by memory, is fragile. It only takes a few generations of suppression, war, or plague to lose thousands of years of cultural memory. Without writing systems, these civilizations couldn't preserve blueprints or schematics. Their knowledge lived in the minds of stoneworkers, engineers, and priests, and when those people were killed or silenced, so was the knowledge. In some cases, we see signs that the Inca may have tried to preserve or mimic what came before. They built on top of megalithic foundations, aligning their sacred architecture with older ruins. But their stonework, smaller, less precise, reveals the truth. They couldn't replicate what they inherited. The truth may be that the greatest mystery of the Andes wasn't hidden, it was simply forgotten, buried under centuries of stone, silence, and rewriting. What we've uncovered so far may just be fragments of a civilization that nature destroyed, and history chose not to remember. But that's beginning to change. In the last few decades, new discoveries have started to rewrite the narrative. So, what has modern technology revealed when science is finally allowed to ask the right questions? The modern awakening, tech meets mystery. For centuries, the great megalithic ruins of Peru stood in silence, misunderstood, misattributed, and largely ignored by mainstream science. But in the last few decades, something changed. As technology advanced, so too did our ability to see what ancient eyes had built. And when the old stones were finally examined through new lenses, satellite imaging, 3D mapping, spectroscopy, and AI-assisted analysis, the results were startling. One of the biggest breakthroughs came through LiDAR, light detection and ranging. Originally developed for aerial topography and military use, LiDAR has become one of the most powerful tools in archaeology. By firing thousands of laser pulses per second from aircraft and measuring the return data, it creates a 3D image of the terrain, even through dense forest or vegetation. In 2022, a joint project between Peruvian universities and international researchers used LiDAR to scan the Sacred Valley and surrounding highlands. What they found beneath the surface shocked them. Dozens of hidden terraces, buried walls, and geometric patterns stretching for miles. Some of these features matched the orientation and design of surface structures, but others had no visible counterparts. They weren't just natural formations, they were man-made, and older than anything previously recorded. In one case, near the site of Moray, LiDAR revealed a series of concentric circular depressions, perfectly engineered rings, descending into the earth like a sunken amphitheater.
We're at Moray to see how they would grow at different altitudes.
Some archaeologists had believed these were simple agricultural terraces.
It is believed that the Incas used Moray as an agricultural laboratory.
But new soil and rock analysis suggests the site may have once been part of a massive acoustic or thermal experiment, possibly involving water, sound, or solar alignment. Suddenly, what was once dismissed as farming had become a candidate for ancient science. Meanwhile, 3D scanning has allowed for millimeter-precise measurements of ancient stonework. At Ollantaytambo, laser-based imaging revealed cuts and grooves that, when digitally mapped, display symmetry and curvature consistent with mechanical machining, not hand chiseling. Some blocks fit with such perfection that thermal expansion data shows they shift together as a single unit during temperature changes. That kind of foresight is rarely seen even in modern stone construction. Material analysis has added more fuel to the fire. In 2023, researchers at the National University of San Marcos conducted spectroscopic testing on select stones at Sacsayhuaman. They found mineral surface patterns suggesting the outer layer of certain blocks may have been chemically altered or heat-treated, possibly to facilitate shaping. No known Incan tool set accounts for this process, and no signs of industrial-grade fire or furnaces have been discovered nearby. The conclusion? An unknown technique used selectively and only on the most complex stones. Even more recently, AI has joined the investigation. By analyzing tens of thousands of data points from sites across Peru, AI programs are identifying architectural patterns previously missed by human researchers. Some walls align with cardinal directions or solar positions within fractions of a degree across multiple locations. Others follow mathematical ratios found in music theory or sacred geometry, such as the golden ratio or Fibonacci sequence. These are not random artistic choices. They are intentional, repeated design elements, implying a standardized knowledge system that spanned generations. And we're only just beginning. From drones mapping inaccessible mountain ridges to ground-penetrating radar scanning beneath modern-day Cusco, the tools of the 21st century are finally beginning to catch up to the achievements of the distant past. What's emerging is not a myth, not a legend, but a very real and very advanced civilization that once walked these mountains. A civilization that left behind no books, no cities, no armies, only stones. Stones that defy time, technology, and explanation. What does this mean for our understanding of history? Maybe we've been asking the wrong questions all along. The mystery is not what we thought. For centuries, the megalithic ruins of Peru were treated as historical footnotes. Remarkable, yes, but ultimately explained away by guesswork and assumption. Yet as we've seen, the deeper we dig, scientifically, technologically, and intellectually, the less sense those assumptions make. These stones were not the result of simple tools or brute force. They are feats of engineering that challenge modern capabilities. With no mortar, no wheels, and no iron, ancient builders moved multi-ton blocks through impossible terrain, shaped them with unexplainable precision, and aligned them to the movements of the stars. The mystery, it turns out, is not just in the stones, but in our own understanding. For too long, history has been written with blind spots, assuming that ancient meant primitive. But the ruins of Peru force us to reconsider everything, not because they whisper of fantasy or aliens, but because they shout of forgotten human brilliance. We are now in the early stages of a new chapter, one where laser scanners, AI, and satellite imaging are revealing a truth that was always there, just hidden beneath soil, myth, and silence. A truth that suggests ancient civilizations may have been far more advanced, technologically, architecturally, and scientifically, than we've been willing to admit. And if that's true here, In the high Andes of Peru, how many other stories have we missed? How many other fingerprints of lost knowledge are waiting just beneath our feet? The real mystery isn't how the stones were placed, it's how we forgot they ever could be. So, have you been to Peru and these places? Tell us if you thought the same way. Drop your comments below. Subscribe to the channel for more.